A starving German shepherd mother stood trembling in the snow outside a remote Alaskan cabin, her ribs sharp beneath a coat hardened by frost. She made no sound, only lifted her tired eyes toward the man inside, a Navy SEAL who had forgotten the warmth of mercy during years of loss. He set food on the frozen ground, expecting nothing in return. He thought it would end there, just a quiet act of kindness swallowed by the winter night. But at dawn, she came back. And this time, 2 tiny puppies stumbled behind her, crying softly through the cold. In that fragile moment, the soldier who believed his heart was beyond saving felt something stir again. A reminder that grace can walk right up to your door when you least expect it. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. Then share this story. Leave a comment below and subscribe so more people can see how faith still finds us in the harshest seasons. The White Storm and the Fading Visitor. Winter pressed hard against Anchorage, turning every breath into drifting frost. Noah Carter stood alone in the narrow warmth of his cabin, a structure of dark timber tucked deep at the edge of the woods. The storm outside clawed at the windows with icy fingers, rattling the old frames as if demanding to be let in. Snow whirled through the darkness like ashes from a dying world. Inside, the fire snapped softly. Ranger, his German shepherd, lay near the hearth with the steady discipline of a trained service dog. At 5 years old, Ranger had the powerful frame of a traditional black and tan shepherd, his muscles taut beneath the thick winter coat. His eyes, amber and intelligent, missed nothing, and though he rarely made a sound, his posture could shift from gentle companion to vigilant guardian in a heartbeat. Noah often envied that simple clarity. He carried his own storms inside, quieter than the one raging beyond the walls, but far more persistent. He had spent 2 decades in the Navy, the last 10 years as a SEAL. His body was strong, tall, and broad in the way soldiers were built, though his left knee carried a stiffness that never let him forget the blast that nearly took his leg. His face was all sharp lines and quiet authority. A square jaw dusted with neatly trimmed beard, brown eyes that softened only around Ranger, and a few strands of early gray at his temples. A map of what he had endured. But his nature was calm, almost too calm. He had learned to keep the world at arm's length. In this cabin, isolation was not punishment. It was refuge. Ranger suddenly lifted his head. His ears snapped forward, body tightening into silent alert. Noah froze, listening. At first he heard nothing but the roar of wind and the creaking of the trees bending beneath their snowy burden. Then, faint, fragile, came a sound that did not belong to the storm. A whimper. Thin, trembling, fading. Ranger stood, paws steady and ready. His tail lowered, not in fear, but in focus. Noah felt the shift inside his chest, the familiar flicker that once signaled danger during operations overseas. It was an instinct he could never fully erase. He reached for his Navy winter coat, thick and practical, lined with wear at the cuffs. Ranger moved beside him, not needing a command. Noah unlatched the door. Wind slammed into him, biting cold, instantly numbing his cheeks. Snow swept across the porch in blinding gusts. Ranger leaned into the wind, bracing himself. Then Noah saw it. A shape, no, 3 shapes, emerging through the flurry. The first was a German shepherd mother, her black and tan fur matted with ice, ribs visible beneath the thinning coat. She was older than Ranger by a few years, perhaps 7, and exhaustion clung to her like a second skin. Her gait was uneven. Every step looked like it might be her last. Behind her, 2 tiny puppies, barely 6 weeks old, stumbled through the snow. Their bodies were small, their fur patchy and stiff with cold. One whined weakly. The other dragged a paw that seemed too frozen to lift. They looked half-starved, born into winter with little hope of surviving a night like this. The mother shepherd met Noah's gaze. Eyes full of fear. Eyes full of plea. Eyes that had not given up. only because giving up would mean abandoning her young. She took one final shaking step toward the porch, nudged the closest pup forward with her muzzle, and collapsed. Her body hit the snow without strength left to cushion her fall. Ranger stepped forward. No growl, no warning, just a single, low bark, soft, barely above the howl of the wind. A bark Noah had heard only twice before, both during rescue missions. A signal. A message. This one needs help. This one is not a threat. Noah's breath caught somewhere between instinct and uncertainty. Snow swirled around the fallen trio, clinging to their fur like winter claiming its due. Ranger looked up at Noah, amber eyes steady, waiting for his decision. The wind moaned across the roof. The fire inside crackled faintly. The night was cold enough to kill anything left outside too long. And Noah stood there on the threshold, between the storm and the warmth, between action and hesitation, uncertain of what he was about to do next. The chapter ends here, with no answer yet to what Noah's first move will be. Traces in the snow. The storm had weakened by dawn, leaving the forest coated in a heavy silence that felt almost deliberate. Pale light filtered through the clouds, settling over the clearing like a thin blanket of ash. Noah Carter stepped outside his cabin with cautious breath, Ranger following at his heel, their boots and paws breaking the untouched snow. The cold bit sharper now that the wind had stopped screaming. Noah's eyes scanned the ground, reading the signs the way he once read terrain on deployment. That instinct had never left him. The first thing he noticed was a thin smear of frozen blood, stretched into a trailing line that wound between the pines. It had been left hours ago, congealed by the night's brutality. Ranger lowered his head, sniffing slowly, the muscles along his shoulders tightening beneath the black and tan coat. "Easy, buddy," Noah murmured, though both of them knew there was no ease to be found here. A few feet farther, footprints appeared, several sets. Some were wide and heavy, belonging to the German shepherd mother. Others were too small, the uneven steps of two exhausted puppies. But mixed among them were prints that did not blend with the pattern of any animal native to these woods. Boots, multiple pairs, and none of them belonged to Noah. He followed the trail deeper into the trees, Ranger pacing beside him with a precision that bordered on military. Each time the dog halted, Noah knelt, noting impressions in the snow. A drag mark here, a scuffle there, the bent stems of frozen underbrush where something, or someone, had pushed through with force. Then he saw the collar. It lay half buried beneath a thin crust of ice. A black nylon band, torn at one end with edges that were cleanly sliced, not bitten, not snagged, cut. A steel tag still clung to the intact loop, scratched beyond readability. Noah picked it up and felt a coldness that had nothing to do with the weather. Someone had owned that dog. Someone had lost control of her, or someone had meant to keep her. Ranger whined softly, drawing Noah farther down the path. The forest opened into a small hollow where the snow looked violently disturbed. Bark had been stripped in patches from the nearby trunks. Footprints overlapped chaotically. A tangle of fur, black and tan, clung to a broken branch. And in the center of it all, the ground bore marks of a struggle. Deep gouges where claws had dug in, and boot prints circling like predators closing in. The entire scene felt wrong. Wrong in a way that prickled the back of Noah's neck. He stood still, letting the cold settle over him, sifting through possibilities. A wounded mother dog dragging two puppies through a blizzard did not simply wander. She fled. But from what? From whom? Ranger's ears flicked backward. He stiffened. Noah turned just in time to see a figure, a dark blur, move between the farther pines. The shape was broad-shouldered, walking upright. Human. The person vanished as soon as Ranger barked, slipping deeper into the forest with a silent efficiency that suggested experience, or a reason not to be seen. Noah felt an unwelcome tightening in his chest. He was no stranger to danger, but danger had always been a choice he walked toward. This, however, had followed him home. He scanned the perimeter, alert. No tracks heading toward the cabin. Whoever had been watching was careful enough to loop around and avoid leaving clear evidence. The forest felt smaller now. Shadows lurked where they hadn't before, and the quiet seemed to listen. Back at the cabin, Noah paused at the porch. The mother shepherd lay inside near the fireplace, curled protectively around her two pups. Their tiny chests rose and fell in fragile rhythm. The mother lifted her head when Noah approached, eyes warmer now but still wary. He crouched near her, feeling the weight of something unspoken. "I don't know what you've been through," he whispered, "but someone didn't want you getting away." Ranger stepped into the doorway and gave a low, troubled sound. Not fear, concern. Noah followed his gaze toward the tree line. Movement again. Not the wandering path of wildlife. Not the shifting of branches under snow. A silhouette. Still. Watching. This time there was no mistaking it. A person. Tall, bundled in dark clothing, posture stiff with purpose. Noah glimpsed the faint outline of a hood, the slope of a shoulder. Then the figure stepped back into the trees, swallowed by shadows as if pulled away by unseen hands. The puppies whimpered. The mother pressed them closer. Ranger's growl simmered in his chest. Noah felt the cold settle deeper beneath his ribs. Someone was out there, and whoever they were, they had followed the dog, perhaps for miles, through one of the worst winter storms Anchorage had seen in years. He reached for the doorframe, steadying himself. The truth was becoming terrifyingly clear. The starving shepherd and her two pups hadn't stumbled onto his porch. They had been running for their lives, and the chase hadn't ended when the storm died. The chapter closes with Noah standing in the open doorway, snow swirling at his feet, realizing that whatever hunted the mother dog now knew exactly where to find her. The burned shack and the truth beneath the ice night settled over the forest with a strange stillness, the kind that made Noah Carter feel as though the world were holding its breath. The storm had eased into a slow, drifting snowfall. Every flake caught the beam of his lantern as he stepped outside, Ranger moving beside him with disciplined precision. The mother shepherd stood at the edge of the porch, her thin frame trembling. Her breath left her in pale clouds. She lifted her head toward Noah, then toward the dark trees behind her. A request, a plea, a direction. Noah pulled his navy winter coat tighter around his shoulders. The fabric was worn from years of use, edges frayed but dependable, much like the man who wore it. He flicked on the flashlight, the beam slicing through the quiet snow. Ranger moved to his left, every muscle poised, amber eyes sharp. "Lead the way," Noah whispered. The mother dog turned and limped forward, each step fragile yet determined. Noah followed her through the forest, boots crunching over frost. The moon hung low, veiled by thin clouds, and the trees loomed like silent witnesses. The puppies remained in the cabin, wrapped in blankets, the fire warm beside them. Noah had hesitated before leaving them, but the urgency in the mother's eyes had left him no choice. After nearly 15 minutes of weaving through the trees, the smell reached them, a faint, acrid bite that did not belong to the wilderness. Ranger tensed first, lowering his head as a low vibration hummed in his chest. The clearing appeared a moment later. Where a structure had once stood, perhaps a temporary cabin or research outpost, now lay a collapsed, blackened ruin. Charred beams stuck out at harsh angles like broken ribs. Snow melted in patches around the debris, steam rising in thin, ghostly ribbons. Ash stuck to the falling snowflakes, turning them gray as they drifted to the ground. Noah stepped closer, scanning the area. The mother shepherd rumbled a soft, sorrowful sound and stood near a twisted metal crate, half buried by ash. The crate was small but sturdy, reinforced with steel rods. Noah knelt beside it, brushing snow away. Inside he saw tufts of soft fur, tan and black, unmistakable. The puppies had been kept here, and the mother had torn through to free them. Ranger circled the burned remains with methodical caution. He sniffed at scattered equipment, overturned tables, melted plastic, and small stainless steel cages, each one warped by heat. Several still bore scratches along the bars, deep enough to belong to desperate animals. Then Noah saw the metal boxes. 3 rectangular containers lay near a scorched tarp. Their surfaces were darkened by smoke, but bright yellow hazard icons still clung stubbornly to one side. He picked up the nearest one, turning it over slowly. The label was partially burned, but he recognized the type: chemical storage for controlled substances, often portable, used by field labs that avoided official oversight. His jaw tightened. Someone had been experimenting out here, illegally, secretly, using animals. A faint crunch of snow made Noah spin. A woman stood near the corner of the clearing, half hidden behind a fallen tree. She froze when their eyes met. She was young, perhaps late 20s, with a slight wiry build beneath a thick green parka. Her face was pale, framed by shoulder-length brown hair escaping from a wool cap. Wide hazel eyes flickered between Noah, Ranger, and the mother dog. Her hands trembled not with cold, but with nerves. I didn't think anyone else would come," she said quietly. Noah straightened, keeping Ranger close. "Who are you?" "My name is Sarah Whitlow." Her voice wavered. "I worked here. Not willingly at first." She stepped into the lantern light, revealing more details. Her nose slightly crooked as if broken once, a faint scar along her right cheek, and a posture that suggested years of bracing for impact. She couldn't have weighed more than 120 pounds, and yet something in the way she held her shoulders showed stubborn resilience. Noah studied her carefully. "Explain." Sarah swallowed hard. This wasn't a shelter or a research station. It was a field lab. They brought in animals, mostly dogs, to test endurance enhancers. None of it was legal. The mother shepherd, she was part of the main group. Her eyes flicked toward the crate. She resisted them, harder than any dog we've seen. The mother shepherd whined softly, almost answering. Sarah continued, voice cracking. "I tried to help them. 2 nights ago, a generator shorted and started the fire. The others fled. They would have taken the surviving animals if they could. But she," Sarah nodded to the mother, "attacked one of the handlers and ran. I thought she died in the storm." Noah felt the cold seep deeper into his chest. "And the people who ran this lab?" "They'll come back," Sarah whispered. "They don't leave loose ends, and they definitely don't let samples go missing." Ranger growled, just once, low and firm. Noah understood the message. He turned back toward the burned shack, ash swirling around his boots. Pieces of the truth were settling into place with grim clarity. The mother shepherd hadn't escaped by chance. She had fought her way out, saved her puppies, and crawled through a storm to reach help. And the people who wanted her back weren't going to stop because the lab was gone. Snow fell harder around them, coating the ruins and dimming the lantern light. Noah looked down at the metal crate, the chemical containers, the burned remains of cages. Someone had treated living creatures as disposable assets. Someone capable of that would not hesitate to threaten anyone who stood between them and their prize. He exhaled slowly, the breath leaving him like steam from a forge. The forest no longer felt like a refuge. It felt like a battleground, and whatever hunted this mother dog and her pups would be returning soon. Pursuit in the night storm. The storm returned with a vengeance, a wall of white shrieking across the treetops. Snow hammered the roof of the cabin in relentless waves, and the wind curled around the corners like a living creature searching for a way inside. The temperature had plummeted so quickly that even Noah Carter felt the sting of cold seeping through the wood. Ranger paced in front of the fireplace, posture taut, his ears pinned forward. The mother shepherd lay curled around her 2 pups, her ribs rising and falling in uneven breaths. Noah checked the windows again, fastening each latch with quiet precision. Sarah Whitlow sat on a chair near the wall, arms wrapped around herself inside a borrowed coat that dwarfed her small frame. Sarah looked pale in the dim lamplight, her hazel eyes darting toward every sound. Her face carried that fragile tension of someone who had lived too long in fear. Noah didn't know her entire story yet, but the scars visible on her cheek and the way she flinched at sudden noises painted most of the picture for him. She had been hurt before, by the same people now hunting the cabin. The dog stirred all at once. Ranger froze first. A low growl vibrated deep in his chest. Then came the sound, a sharp crack echoing through the storm, gunfire, muffled but unmistakable. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Noah felt the familiar rush of focus settle into his body, washing away everything but clarity and timing. His posture straightened, every line of him shifting from civilian quiet to the controlled readiness of a Navy SEAL. He moved to the window with careful steps, pulling the curtain aside just an inch. A beam of white light cut through the swirling snow. Flashlight. Another beam followed. Two men pushed through the drifts, dressed in dark tactical coats and insulated masks. They moved with a harsh, purposeful confidence, their silhouettes sharp against the snow glare. Noah watched their gait, the slight hunch forward to counter wind, the way their hands stayed near their belts. Professionals, not military, not law enforcement. Something in between, something worse. One of them shouted over the storm, voice raw with impatience. "Return the samples! Now!" Sarah flinched violently. Ranger snarled. The mother shepherd pulled her pups under her body, ears flat with terror. Noah exhaled once. Quiet, controlled, deadly calm. He spoke to Sarah without taking his eyes off the window. "Stay with the dogs. Don't move unless I tell you." She nodded, though her trembling fingers betrayed her fear. Noah slid across the floor and checked the layout of the cabin in his mind. Every corner, every shadow, every angle. He had chosen this place for solitude, not for defense, but old habits meant he always kept options ready. The wind slammed hard against the door as he extinguished the lantern. The cabin fell into darkness, broken only by the faint orange glow of the fire's embers. Ranger moved instantly to Noah's side, his breathing quiet, steady, trained. Another shout came from outside. "We know you have them! Bring the dogs out!" Then footsteps, crunching closer. Noah crouched and touched Ranger's shoulder. "Back route," he whispered. They slipped to the rear of the cabin, Noah pulling on gloves and sliding open the back door just wide enough to pass through. The cold struck him like a blade, but he embraced it, becoming just another shadow in the storm. Ranger pressed low against the snow, amber eyes locked ahead. The attackers reached the porch. A heavy fist slammed against the door. Another shot rang out, striking the frame. Inside, Sarah yelped and clamped both hands over her mouth. The pups whimpered. The mother shepherd nudged them silent, trembling violently. Noah signaled Ranger. The two moved around the side of the cabin, stepping where the wind masked their prints. The storm gave them cover, the way smoke once had on distant battlefields. Noah felt that old rhythm again. Breath, step, scan, react. A silhouette appeared around the porch. Noah let him pass. Then in one swift movement he lunged. He tackled the man into the snow, one hand crushing his wrist while the other forced his arm up behind his back. The man was strong, thick shoulders, heavy boots, but he was sloppy in his panic. Noah locked him down and drove a knee into his ribs. Ranger leapt forward and planted himself at the man's head, growling low and fierce. The man froze, eyes widening behind his mask, understanding the danger. "Don't move," Noah said, voice calm but iron hard. Another shape stumbled backward at the corner of the house, his partner. The second man saw Ranger's silhouette in the snow, saw his colleague pinned, and fear overtook courage. He turned and bolted straight into the blizzard. The storm swallowed him whole within seconds. Noah bound the first man's wrists with the cord from his coat, checked him for weapons, then dragged him into the lee of the cabin where the wind couldn't carry him off. The man sputtered curses, but Noah ignored them. Ranger stood guard, hackles raised. Inside the cabin, the mother shepherd still trembled, her body wrapped protectively around her pups. Sarah knelt beside her, reaching out with careful hands. The dog didn't move away this time. Noah stepped inside, snow still caught in his beard, cold burning in his lungs. The storm raged on, shaking the roof, rattling the shutters, but the worst of the danger had passed. For now. Tonight, this cabin was more than a hiding place. It had become the last line of defense for 3 fragile lives. And Noah understood something with sudden clarity. He wasn't just protecting the dogs anymore. He was protecting the fragile hope they represented. Dawn and the new path. Morning crept into the valley with a pale gold glow, a quiet contrast to the violence of the night before. The storm had finally exhausted itself, leaving soft drifts shaped like dunes across the yard. Smoke rose steadily from Noah's cabin chimney, carrying the scent of cedar and long-burning embers. By the time Anchorage officers arrived, the sky had cleared enough to show a streak of early sunlight on the horizon. Their snowmobiles hummed low as they approached the clearing. Leading the small team was Officer Daniel Mercer, a man in his early 40s with a sturdy frame and a neatly trimmed beard that framed his square jaw. His blue eyes held the weary patience of someone who had seen plenty of unusual winter emergencies. Mercer carried himself with the calm confidence of a veteran officer, steady, collected, but not immune to concern. Beside him was Deputy Elise Harmon, a tall woman with broad shoulders and dark auburn hair tied into a braided knot. Her skin was pale, almost porcelain against the cold, and her gaze sharp with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Elise had the measured tone of someone who valued protocol, but there was kindness beneath her firm exterior, a kindness she tried not to show unless necessary. Noah greeted them outside, Ranger standing at his left heel, posture alert but not aggressive. Mercer glanced at the bound attacker Noah had subdued the night before, still sitting against the porch railing, shivering under a blanket. Elise secured the man with cuffs, her movements precise. "You've had quite a night," Mercer said, folding his arms. "Dispatch mentioned shots fired, a break-in attempt, and dogs." His brow furrowed. "Plural." "You'll want to see inside," Noah replied. The officer stepped into the cabin, where the warmth was thick and comforting. Sarah Whitlow sat near the fire, holding a mug in both hands. The mother shepherd lay on a pile of blankets, her 2 pups nestled against her belly. She lifted her head at the newcomers, ears twitching but no longer trembling the way she had before. "She's recovering," Noah said, "but she needs monitoring. All 3 do." Mercer crouched carefully, examining the dogs from a respectful distance. "She's in rough shape," he murmured, "but alive. That's something." Sarah spoke softly, her voice steadier now. "They were experimenting on them. Endurance chemicals, forced overexertion, things no animal should suffer." Mercer exchanged a grim look with Elise. Elise pulled out a small notebook. "We'll get your full statement, Ms. Whitlow, and we'll notify animal control and state investigators. Labs like this don't operate alone." Noah watched them work, feeling a rare sense of alignment. For once, the world outside was stepping forward to help. As the officers transported the captured attacker, Sarah lingered near the window. She was still fragile, thin, hunched slightly as if guarding herself from past blows, but there was a flicker of hope in her hazel eyes. Noah placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You're safe now," he said. She nodded. "Thank you. Not just for me, but for them." Her gaze drifted to the dogs. When the officers departed, leaving behind contact information and the promise of follow-up, the cabin felt strangely larger, as if something heavy had finally been lifted. The days that followed were quiet in a way Noah hadn't felt in years. The mother shepherd grew stronger each morning. Her coat regained its sheen, her ribs no longer sharp against her skin. Noah named her Aurora, inspired by the winter dawn that had wrapped around her survival. The name seemed to settle into her like something she had been waiting for. The pups thrived. One was bold, bounding across the cabin with clumsy enthusiasm. The other was smaller, slower to stand, often wobbling on unsteady legs. Ranger stayed close to the weaker pup, guiding him with gentle nudges and patient watchfulness. It was a role he accepted without hesitation: protector, mentor, guardian. Sarah assisted Noah for a week before relocating to a shelter in Anchorage arranged by Officer Mercer. She thanked Noah repeatedly, though her voice never fully lost the tremor of someone relearning trust. As winter thinned and the first hints of spring pushed through the melting snow, Noah found himself lingering outdoors more often. The sun hung just a little higher each day, warming the earth enough for Aurora and her pups to chase shadows in the yard. Ranger joined them, barking sharply when the bold pup wandered too far, then laying down with paternal pride when they tumbled over him. Standing on the porch, Noah felt something shift inside him. Home no longer meant isolation. It meant breath, warmth, movement, life. The grief he had carried for years loosened in small, steady threads. The cabin that once echoed with silence now echoed with soft paws, playful yips, and the rustle of Aurora's watchful steps. On a morning washed in gold, Noah walked across the yard with Aurora at his side. Her two pups bounded ahead, small, clumsy shapes dancing across patches of grass newly freed from snow. Ranger watched them with amber eyes full of quiet satisfaction. Noah knelt, running his fingers through Aurora's thick fur. "We're keeping you," he murmured. "All of you." Aurora pressed her head against his chest, a gesture of trust as deep as language. Noah watched the pups tumble over each other. He smiled to himself. They weren't meant to come here just to be saved, he thought. They came to save something in me, too. The breeze carried the scent of pine and thawing earth. Aurora lifted her head, her gaze steady and bright. Together, beneath the first true light of spring, they stepped forward into a new beginning. Sometimes the greatest miracles do not arrive in flashes of light or grand moments that shake the earth. Sometimes they come quietly, on tired legs, through a winter storm, wrapped in fear yet carrying hope. Aurora and her little ones were not just strays on Noah's doorstep. They were reminders sent in the hush of God's timing, whispers of grace laid gently into a life that had forgotten it still deserved healing. And maybe that is the lesson for all of us, that even in ordinary days, between work and worry and the small burdens we carry, God still places signs before us. A second chance, a softened heart, a hand reaching out when we expect nothing at all, miracles that look simple on the outside but change the course of a life forever. If this story touched you, share it with someone who might need a reminder that hope still walks beside them. Leave a comment below and tell us where you're watching from, or share the moment when grace found you. And if you want more stories that warm the spirit and lift the heart, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next one. May God bless you, your family, and every quiet miracle waiting at your own doorstep.